So, we're doing Avatar: The Last Airbender Live Action on Netflix. We have a runtime that's 20 minutes longer than the original, so why don't we cram as much as we can into one episode? Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So it is the 23rd of February, and today my sister and I binged Avatar: The Last Airbender Live Action show on Netflix. So we watched episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6. So because I binged so many episodes, I took notes on my computer for each episode so that I won't forget like what points I want to talk about in which episodes. So today I'm going to be reviewing episode 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender live action show on Netflix. Episode 3 is called Omashu. So for reference, I forgot to actually give you guys the titles and everything on my last 2 reviews. So episode 1 is called Aang, and I gave it a 5-star review. Episode 2 is called Warriors, and I also gave it a 5-star review. I'll have those as cards and probably link to them at the end as well. But anyways, so let's get into this. So episode 3, Omashu. I'm going to be checking my computer to make sure I'm staying on point here, just to let you guys know. So the pacing felt very quick in this episode. It was just like so much into one episode. I'll get on details on that here in a minute. But basically they go to Omashu in this episode. So the city of Omashu looked so fantastic. It looked amazing. I loved all the costumes. I loved the set. And I mean, it's not really a set, but like the whole look of the city, it was fantastic. I loved the mail way system thingy. They did include in this episode, they met the Mechanist, which was like the guy that was supposed to take over the air temple and invent things, the inventor as I like to call him, and his son Teo. They did include Jet and the Freedom Fighters, and they alluded to King Boomy, but we didn't actually see him in this episode, but that was also there. And we also had Iroh and Zuko make it into the city as well. So there was a lot going on in this episode, and it just felt so fast, with so many things kind of thrown together. So Jet was amazing. His acting and his appearance was fantastic. When they were first coming into the city through the city gates, they needed a way to get into the city because the guards are really strict and protective over it, which I did like. It felt very natural and realistic, and again amping up like the realism and the age, like the maturity level. And so there was a guy on a wagon and they get to talking. I can't remember the details because again, I've binged like 6 episodes today. But basically he kind of helped smuggle them in, and the way he was acting and talking, we were like, okay, is this going to be the Earthbender that Katara gets to meet? I don't think it's Teo because he didn't seem paralyzed to me, and he was just acting very Jet-like, so we weren't sure. He didn't reveal his name, but he was acting very much like Jet, so I'm like, I bet that's Jet. And later on you find out that was him and he helped them out, and so basically they change up the drama, so he's fighting Fire Nation soldiers not in the forest but inside the city because there's Fire Nation agents kind of sneaking in there. And then so him and Katara find out that the Mechanist is actually working with the Fire Nation soldiers, and so Katara gets to go with Jet and meet the Freedom Fighters in their camp outside the city and all of that stuff, because they go after some firebenders, the firebenders that the Mechanist was working with, while Sokka stayed with the Mechanist to help him with his invention, while Aang took Teo and they went up to the mine to find out the source of, because the city's being bombed by Fire Nation soldiers, quote unquote, and so Aang and Teo go up there to check that out. So basically the gang gets split off, and here's the thing, even though Aang didn't do much in the Jet episode in the original TV show, and Sokka and Katara had a lot of contention, and this was a big moment for both Katara and Sokka, because Sokka's instincts told him that something was up with Jet and the Freedom Fighters. Nobody listened to him. Katara didn't listen to him. He ended up being right, and he saved the village from Jet and the Freedom Fighters when they were going to blow the dam and flood the village. Katara also she fell for Jet. They've had a love moment relationship, and he betrayed her, and she was really hurt and knew to listen to her brother. So it's a big episode, and Sokka and Aang never really, they get to meet him, and they do a little bit of dialogue in the wagon that kind of reflects the relationship that they do end up having in the original show, but it was just that moment on the wagon, and that was it. Aang and Sokka never really got to meet him, or they never got to meet any of the other Freedom Fighters either, and I hated that. So I feel like The Mechanist and Teo worked well in the city of Omashu and blended perfectly and would have been fine on their own. I feel like adding Jet and the Freedom Fighters made it too fast-paced and felt like a puzzle piece that you're trying to shove together when they don't belong together. Jet and the Freedom Fighters belonged later in the show, and I had a perfect place where they could have added it and had the pacing that worked better, but they didn't. But overall, I loved Jet and I loved the Freedom Fighters, and look, the fight scene was amazing. He looked identical and his swords looked identical. He did Jet's move where he takes one of them, hooks it to the other, and swings it around. It was great. It also helped me visualize how he could have fought firebenders with swords, so that was wonderful. Jet and Katara actually had a really wonderful moment. They had really great chemistry. They actually had a long conversation, so they had a lot of screen time in the middle, basically where they have a long conversation about their backstories, and they have this emotional connection, and Jet helps her through her issues, which in turn helps unlock her bending a little bit more. So that was really nice. So again, did not like how Sokka and Aang did not get to know Jet at all, which does reflect later to another point that I hated. So I'll mention that in the next episode, so stay tuned for that. Yeah, so loved the Freedom Fighters, but we barely got like one scene with them and got to know their names, and that was it. Like, we didn't have a lot of time with them like we would have in the original if it had been a half an hour long. So their screen time was not as much, which, again, they tried to cram way too much into one episode. I feel like if they had just done the Mechanist and Omashu, then done Jet and the Freedom Fighters later at a later episode, it would have been better. I liked Sokka and the Mechanist when they're working together on the Mechanist invention. Supposedly he invents things for the king of Omashu, but he's secretly working with the Fire Nation, just like in the original. They have a really nice conversation, so that's where Sokka finally gets his development moment, where he feels obligated to just be a fighter like his dad wants, but he actually has a hobby of like inventing things and like helping out. He did that all the time at their village, and they did bring that out, and the Mechanist tells him to embrace like what he really wants to do in being an engineer, not just a fighter. So that arc that we missed with Sokka not having like an arc learning lessons from the Kyoshi warriors, he kind of like has a different arc in this episode with the Mechanist in that conversation that they had. So I did like that. I did not like Teo. He looked way too young, and he had the wrong look and appearance. He just did not look like Teo at all. And he was way too angry. He was way too angry and gung-ho about fighting the Fire Nation and, you know, his dad being a hero for helping to fight. And when he found out Aang was the Avatar, he was talking about Aang actually fighting the Fire Nation and bombing them back. And he had so much anger, when Teo in the original is this really happy-go-lucky guy who just wants to have a bunch of fun. And he's never really serious. And he has this playful kind of boy-like attitude in the original that just was not there, even though he looked much younger than the Teo in the original. The Teo from the original looks older, but was happier and more joyful. It was just weird. I did not like Teo at all. So again, Jet looked and acted perfect. The Mechanist, so Teo's dad, looked absolutely perfect. Nailed his appearance. He didn't seem more... in the original, he seems more like a crazy inventor. Not as crazy, but just doing all these random things together. And some of the silliness of what he invents is kind of different. Like, him and Sokka have this joking nature with each other that was missed because they kind of toned it up and made it more mature and less silly, which is kind of the feeling that I'm getting from the whole show, is that a lot of the silliness have been taken out to make it more mature. So I loved the drama in the city with the Fire Nation and the bombings. There's a little bit of a twist there. So Jet does not obviously flood a village because they're not in the middle of nowhere, but they do have him do something bad that they have to stop, and it does create an issue, and so Katara has to go stop it. There is no fight between Jet this episode. That is actually a next episode, and I will have a comment about that when I get to that review. So be looking out for that next week. So Zuko and Iroh sneak into the city, which it was, I can't remember how they sneak into the city, but they do, even though the others had trouble getting in there and they're actually good guys. So Zuko ends up finding Aang and chasing after him, and him and Aang have this really epic fight in the city, and I love it, and it's really, 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 really great. Like, honestly, that was one of the high points for me of this episode, was the fight scene between Zuko and Aang. Like, the martial arts and the way that they, like, really good fighters like people who know how to fight know to use the environment around them to help defend yourself. And because anything can be a weapon when you use it properly, and they both brought that to light. And you can tell that these guys have been trained and have had training or been taught for the sake of the show. And it really shows. I think Zuko's actor is an actual martial artist, and I know Aang's actor has mentioned that he's caught on really quickly. So it's a fantastic, well, that was a beautiful fight scene. I loved it. I still miss the fight between Aang and Jet, but we'll get on that next episode, so I'm getting ahead of myself. So it was wonderful. So overall, I enjoyed episode 3, Omashu. I felt like they tried to combine too much into one episode. I think dividing it in half to do like the Mechanist and inside the city of Omashu, and then giving that way Sokka and Aang could have been with Katara to meet Jet and the Freedom Fighters, and then Jet and the Freedom Fighters could have had their own screen time of 20 to 30 minutes to themselves like they did in the original. Would have worked better, but it wasn't bad, so I would say this one's 4 stars for me. The fast pacing made it drop down from 5 to 4, but overall it still looked really good. So honestly, that's my thoughts. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below whether you've seen the original or not. What are your thoughts? Let me know. And in the meantime, if you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you liked my review of episode 3, then check out my review of the first episode in this series, in this show. It's kind of a series, so check that out. You don't want to miss it. And stay tuned for my next one coming hopefully next week. So